Toby, hello.
Dave, how you doing?
I'm all right. Good to see you. Thank you for joining me in conversation today.
Thank you for having me. It's a privilege.
No problem, no problem. So, for anyone who's joined this conversation, let's start. How do we know each other?
So, you and me go way back. I met you probably around like 5 years ago, almost to the month. Sort of just before the a few months before the pandemic, and y- I had been seeing a therapist in South Ken, and the therapist brought you into the mix, and I'm sure you remember meeting me. I have vague recollections of meeting you. I'm not entirely sure I did, to be honest.
Well, look, my version of it is I got a phone call from said therapist,
Yeah.
saying, Dave, are you free to come in? I could do with some help. With like, you needed a different angle in helping yourself because
Mm.
um you'd at the time, I think you was very much under the influence, so it was a containment situation. It
Yeah, crisis
Yeah,
management.
yeah, so it's like you needed sort of a bit of backup, I think. So I got a phone call, so I came down there and turned up. And yeah, you were. I can't remember. I can't remember if you was actually in there or if you had already made it an attempt to sort of board yourself up in the toilet at that point. But there was. I can't remember how it all played out. But you was basically off your nuts.
I have a vague recollection of me meeting you in the room with said therapist, or you coming in whilst we were in a session, and then I was asked to wait outside, and while you guys had a chat with my dad. And when you guys were in there, that's where I like boarded myself up in the room, because I remember my dad saying that there was a lady from like a few doors down trying to use the bathroom but couldn't get in, and so she came into the session, was like, I think
That's it. Yeah,
someone's
yeah.
boarded himself in the bathroom, which was
Absolutely.
just me just off my rocker.
Yeah, you was like acting as a doorstop on the inside of
Yep.
the toilet door. Yeah. So I remember. Yeah, right. So I come to the practice. I'm in the room. You're because you got out a bottle of, what was it, gin or something? You done.
Pink chin, or I think it was.
Yeah. Okay. And you drunk.
Yeah.
You drunk a lot of it. You'd had a good attempt of drinking the entire bottle. And this is at a therapy session, right? So I need to ask you this question. I don't think I ever asked you this question. Why are you going to a therapy session sculled out your mind on gin? Why was that?
I mean, for me, therapy at that time, I was 16. It wasn't something I had chosen to do. It was something that had very much been put upon me, as any parent, I think, is want to do. They want to see their child all right.
Of
That's
course.
completely understandable. And so, they had tried, therapists, psychiatrists. I had tried therapists and psychiatrists. And so I'd been going to so many therapists that I think I was just kind of sick of the roundabouts at that point. And so,
The revolving door
yeah,
of therapy.
just
Yeah.
yeah, it had been a cycle for about 10 months of just therapy and out. I mean, I went to so many therapists and so many psychiatrists in that 10-month period, that even when I found, out the said therapist, and he was absolutely fantastic, I didn't realize it at the time. And so it was very much for me, I'm in a structure. It The fact I was going to therapy had nothing to do with it, because my life purpose was to use drugs and to drink. That was my purpose, and going to therapy didn't really change that for me.
Wasn't
Yeah,
convenient. It
no,
wasn't.
no, yeah, exactly. It wasn't inconvenient. It wasn't something I planned on doing. It was something I was told I had to do, and I was like, okay, if I'm being quite literally forced to go to this, I guess I have to go. But
So
yeah.
can I just ask you? So at that time in your life, you were 16. What was the sort of the top of the list? Because there's probably many things, right? As you know, right? But like, what was at the top of the list, like the standout thing that you felt you was struggling with at that time?
I didn't feel that I was accepted, I think. I mean, like you said, there are so many different factors that played into it, and there are so many factors that play into everyone's. But for me in particular, it was very much that I felt the people who mattered most to me, who didn't necessarily, I didn't necessarily matter to them, although most of them I did. But my family, obviously I mattered to them, but
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
my friend, like my true friends, I mattered to them, but then there were some people who I really didn't, and I realized that afterwards.
Yeah.
I felt rejected by them,
Okay.
and so those are the people, the most important people in my life for a really, really long time. I did not feel accepted or loved or wanted by. And so maybe, and the truth is, I probably was. It was just my own perceptions. And, I mean, it can be a mess, there are no conflict is one-sided or no, there are two versions of every story.
Of course.
And so I think probably was a mix. I know certainly, from some of the sites, there was certainly a mix of that, people probably could have shown me some affection and warmth and love in better than they could have. But also I was pushing it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry to interject there. So look, I was gonna say, let's not get into the nitty-gritty and the specifics of the who and the what and the why and all of that stuff, okay? 'Cause, um, I just wanna touch on, 'cause I relate to that, we have people around us, we have friends, family, community, if you wanna call it that. There is a sense or, a feeling that, maybe on the outside of us, there is a connectivity. On paper, we're connected, right? But
Mm.
internally, we feel completely disconnected, right? And alone and rejected and maybe insecure even, like from what you're saying.
Oh, massively. Yeah.
Yeah. And I relate to that, Toby, like big time, right? So I had lots of people around me, but doesn't matter how many people I'm sitting with, it could be just two people in a room. I feel like I'm on my own and that them two people, you know, it's a common thing.
As always,
Yeah, it's a
as always, Dave, you describe things. You say what I say, but better.
oh, shut up. No, no, I don't. So look, you're 16 at this time, right? You still actively engaged in school
By
at
the
that
point
time?
that I met you, no. So
Okay.
yeah, so I had been pushed out of school, rightfully so. Um, Probably about a month and a half to 2 months before I met you, because I did meet you. It was, I can't remember if it was like December or November of 2019.
It was cold because I remember being outside in London when you had your head in a plant pot outside. Sorry to say this, to bring this up, but you did. You was on I think you was at one point in like a fetal position on the floor on the pavement, and passers-by were walking past, and you're throwing up in a plant pot.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
And
I remember. I remember the plant pot.
and
Yeah,
it was cold, mate. I was freezing. Me and your dad was standing there, sort of looking down, going, sort of shaking our heads, going, "Oh my God, look at the state it is." And it was cold.
Jesus.
It's all good. Come good, mate.
Yeah,
It all ended well. Uh,
exactly. Yeah,
so yeah, going back. So was you at school? I think it was in winter. Yeah. So do you know? Was you
yeah.
out of school? In school? Can you remember?
Yeah, so I was out of school sort of middle of October and like mid-October, early November. I don't remember the specific dates. Because and that was just after the start of my lower sixth year, which is like year 12 basically.
Yeah. Okay. And I just want to set the scene here, right? The crime scene. Um, so you was at that time at a very prestigious, is that the right word? Prestigious school. It was
Yeah,
a really
yeah.
good school. It was a good school, right? And on paper, you know, you're at a good school. You've got the love of a family, right? You've got friends. You know, you've got your peers. Um, in theory, everything's great, Toby. So what's the problem?
On paper, it's more than anyone could ask for, really. And, you know, I am incredibly grateful and lucky to have had the opportunities that I have had,
Hmm.
but it has not been as easy as it would look on the outside. Because I think when everyone's young, I don't know, when I was very young, and I think a lot of people have this, they get like these IQ tests when they're like very, very small, just so they can kind of get a grasp of like, you know, learning difficulties and sort of general intelligence levels from quite an early age, and, you know, set up your kid to the best possible future. And I remember mine. I was you know, I was 3 or 4, and and what the and you know, I always remembered this report. I was told that I was going to be a really, really, you know, bright kid. You know, I had a big future. I was going to be really smart, and that's a hell of a lot of pressure for a 4-year-old.
I was going to say 3 or 4 years old.
I,
There was someone.
yeah, I was really, really young. I remember how young I was. Yeah.
Do you remember? I mean, you haven't got to give the exact figure, but I mean, IQ. I don't think I've ever taken an IQ. I mean, I consider us all to be very, very intelligent. You know, I do by default. I think we've all got the ability, great capacity, to do great and have greatness in our lives. But circumstance and what other factors come into life. Life happens, and sometimes we can deviate off course for whatever reason. I know what mine were, and you know, I'd love you to share maybe. So you're as a 4-year-old, you know, you're being told you're going to be like Einstein, um,
Yeah.
for example. Do you actually remember? What do you remember about that time? You know, of being told that. You just said you.
I remember, yeah, I remember actually when I was, you know, in my early years from about, so, you know, during like sort of the first half of primary school, when I was about like 5 to 9. And this is when me and my family still lived in London. Um, you know, I would do, you know, in my, as far as like an academic point of view goes, I did really, really well. You know, I won a trophy for mathematics when I was 8.
Mm,
You know, you know, I picked it all up really, really quickly. It was as I then got older, it was sort of more when I got to about age 12 that it didn't become as easy anymore. Um, where, you know, I wasn't constantly top of the class. You know, bright spark, and I started falling down the list and other people started climbing. Um, and that kind of continued all the way up until I finished school, up until I turned 18. Sort of that sort of
so,
pattern.
but can I ask you? Because again, I relate right on the level of when I started school. Um, I was like one of those people that's gifted. You know, I was creatively gifted, artistic, very artistic. But I was also, you know, I was very, I want to use the word conscientious, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word, but I was sort of giving it my best shot, if that's the right word,
Yeah.
right? The right term. And I was doing well at school. And I think I was around
Mm.
about the 13, 14 mark when my school reports would say, could do better, needs to pay more attention, needs to pay more attention, you know, and all of that stuff. So I'm going from being maybe mildly conscientious to unconscious. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's no coincidence that I started to dabble in certain things and behaviours um, and strategies that I found and came across that, you know, and little habits, if you want to call it that, to sort of navigate my life at that time. Does that make
If I ever write, if I ever write a 5-book memoir, well, I imagine that the age between 9 and 15, those years would be under the chapter title of "Could Be Better," because that was essentially the story for about 5 to 6 years of my life.
Okay.
Was getting those school reports saying he's clearly bright, could try harder,
Yeah.
could be
Yeah.
better. Not the big one, not fulfilling expectations.
Okay.
That was the big one.
So where did it all go wrong, Toby, for you? Do you feel? Was there one defining moment of like, fuck this horse shit. I can't be doing this anymore. I've given up.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so there was one defining moment that definitely started a disaster, although there had been building blocks that before that, which meant that when I did fall, that it was going to be as catastrophic as it was. But the main point was a breakup I had when I was 15, and I'm sure, yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think,
remember.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was during a time where my mental health had already started to take a decline, where those like the years of having that pressure on me was beginning to take its toll, where I was beginning to feel those feel you know I was 15, was going through puberty. I was getting I was like my feelings were becoming a lot deeper, a lot more complex. And so when I was a kid and you're able just to see things in a very light-hearted point of view, like shrug it off, oh, I'm not interested, I want to go play. But then, you're 15, you're being told that your best isn't good enough. That sits a lot deeper in the 15-year-old than it does a 7-year-old.
Affects your self-esteem, doesn't it? Your self-esteem.
Yeah. So it's massive. Yeah, my self-esteem was in the gutter.
Yeah.
And this girl came along, and she, for a few months turned my world around. I was at that up until that point in my life was the happiest I'd ever been. I was in this relationship. I felt loved. I felt accepted. I felt held, which had been a feeling that I really hadn't felt in quite a long time. Not from my family. Friends can provide, like comradeship, but just like love
I know you. Yeah.
comes up a long way, like a
Yeah.
different form of intimacy.
Yeah.
And
Just feeling like you're part of something that's got meaning, purpose, like on a deep level. Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
continue. Go on.
Yeah, and then that relationship ended, and that is when that's when it all fell apart. Without
And that was at
without a doubt.
16. And that was at
That was at
16.
15. That was at
15.
15.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was it was over the summer after my year 10. So I was 15, and then my mental health took a huge drop. My self-esteem fell, depression and anxiety developed, and I was dealing with that for months. Probably for about two months before I began to explore routes of self-medication.
And
Uh,
can I just interject? You said I was dealing with it for about, was it 5 months? You said on your own you was trying to sort of navigate.
yeah. So it was probably, it was a few months. Yeah.
How was you just said self-medication. Was that how you was dealing with it?
So the way I had been dealing with it was the same way I'd always kind of dealt with things in the past, shrug it off, because that's what had worked in the past. But because it's not as easy as that. Like I said, it works when you're younger. It doesn't work when you're older. And I never had anyone to explain this to me. I didn't have anyone to, tell me, like, by the way, these you're gonna get feelings and they're gonna suck for a bit, but you need to talk about them. I
Just
never
have,
had that.
can we just land on that, right? Because
Yeah.
I think it's really important, right? 'cause again, I relate. Um, if at school they'd done a specific class on how to be, you know, young, like, for me, a young lad coming of age, puberty, and they had a
Yeah,
lesson specifically tailored for us young men, boys coming to men, coming of age, to better equip us with how to navigate our emotional world. Do you think that would have helped you?
absolutely. And I think a lot
You
more.
do?
I think
Okay.
a lot. Yeah, I think because some people are very lucky, to have environments which do nurture that. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm lucky that I now do, but I didn't in the past. So that
Okay.
I did not have an environment
Okay.
where I felt like I could learn that at school, at home. You know,
Okay.
neither felt like an environment which fostered, I guess, knowledge of myself.
Okay. So
I guess, yeah,
again, I relate, and I have to say this, having done a lot of work on myself, right? Is at the time when I was younger, I felt ill equipped and overwhelmed. Like you, I felt like I didn't have the tools I needed to do life on life's
yeah,
terms, right? So,
yeah,
and my school, if they had had them lessons, would I have listened? Not sure, right? Because I found it really hard to pay attention.
yeah,
Um, so I'm not sure if school had that on offer, whether I would have taken it on board and it would have helped. My
mm,
mum, dear mum, love you, mum, bless her, did all beyond measure to do all she could to make me feel loved. I just
yeah,
couldn't let it in. I had a block. It was my end,
yeah,
my doing. I was sabotaging it for whatever reason. I don't need to get into that right now. But, you know, like you, I felt like I didn't get what I needed, right? For whatever reason.
mm,
No blame, no
yeah.
shame. Okay.
No
Right.
blame, no shame.
And but it is what it is. So we go into life. And I think this is something that what we are talking about is not an isolated thing. You're not just like alone. I'm not just it's not like we're just sort of it's a minority. I think it's quite a common thing for a lot of people. And it's not just for younger people, there's a lot of older people out there who might be listening to this going, yeah, in reflection, I relate to what's being said here.
Mm,
It's
yeah.
common, right?
It's far more common than we think. It's very I would say it's very, very much conditioned by society, especially in the UK. There's this mentality of, you soldier on, you know. It's all about image. It's all
Let's have a
about how the way you
have a
present yourself.
thing.
Have a cup of tea, that'll fix everything. That's so real. It's alright. It's really ironic because that is honestly real. It's just like sleep it off, have a cup of tea.
Yeah.
But
Get
things
get a grip, mate.
get a grip. Exactly. But these things run so much deeper than a cup of Tetley and two sugars. If I'm being honest.
Okay. So look, it's good we can laugh about this because it's
Yeah.
important. It's important to get to a place in your life where you can laugh about it, all right? But going back to when you wasn't laughing about it, and it was a very serious issue for you, as it was for me, and I just we navigate it by gravitating towards things to help us get through, right?
Yeah.
The art of survival kicks in, right?
Yeah.
So, do you wanna talk a little bit more about that, Tobes?
Yeah. So, I've been when those feelings came up, or those feelings of I'm not, I'm not good enough. It was very much my core belief from, the rejection from that girlfriend, you know, the rejection from my family of you need to do better. That was probably then when my core belief internalized as worthlessness, which is a heavy core belief to carry around. It's very, very heavy. And so then when I got to the point where I tried to do something about it, a solution just came out of somewhere I wasn't really expecting it. It was I took a bottle of, like fancy booze from my parents' cabinet, and I took it to school with me. Um, and
What is it? Can I just say, what is it with like pink gin?
that's shit. This is gonna sound like I have a particular appetite. Wasn't. Wasn't.
City drinks, man.
I listen. I would have drunk anything. You'll see the progression of how the class falls from these high.
You, I'm not drinking ale. I'm not drinking beer. That's beneath me.
Yeah, I'm drinking Genepi
Oh dear.
from the Swiss
Right.
Alps.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's get back on track. Right. So, on a serious note, go back
yeah,
to
yeah.
where you were.
Yeah, so I took this bottle of booze from my parents' house, and I went to a boarding school, and so I took it to boarding school, and when you're at boarding school, they'll sometimes organize, like they'll like parties, for the year group. Our school,
Mm.
like, they called them bars because and English boarding schools are very much steeped in tradition like that. Um, and and I went and I had like a quarter of this bottle, and when you're carrying around, I've been carrying around like these feelings of like social anxiety. Like, I was so aware of what everyone else was and what they were doing, because I couldn't bear to look at myself. Because looking at myself and being myself was really, really painful. Um, that when I first started drinking, you know all of that burden was lifted almost instantaneously from,
Mm.
a few minutes after that first sort of shot.
Yeah.
And that was, yeah, and that was my first, it wasn't the first time I drank, but it was the first time I had used to numb my feelings. And, you know, the effect was so immediate and so incredible for me. It was far more incredible than anything that had ever happened. That became my solution, and it was my solution for quite a while.
Wow. So again, I have to say, I relate. I remember the first time I'm taking a piss out of you and your choice of drinks.
Yeah.
The first drink I ever really got my hands onto was my mum's sherry.
How dare you? You come at me throwing this shade, and you
I
play that.
know, I know. But look, there was something really like, talking about the sensation, right? The sensation, because for me it was like a ritual. I developed it as a ritual, and that warm, syrupy, comforting taste of my mum's sherry. In the moment that hit my palate, it was the feeling that made me feel like everything was going to be okay.
Mm.
And it was just like, and you had, that glow, that sort of glow. It sounds like I'm
Yeah.
really promoting it, and it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
like,
this sounds great.
no, no, but that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem right there. It's fucking great. Do you know what I mean?
And for those of us who can deal with it, or those of us in the world who can manage that, hats
Mm,
off to you. I'm not going to shit on your lifestyle or cramp on your style for that. But for those of us who do it for the wrong reasons, and it becomes our only source of comfort. I get what you mean about like that comforting thing. For me, whenever you're having like a spirit and you get like that sharp sting at the back of your throat,
mm.
um, I live for that sting, because when I've had that sting, it was like, that's like the pain you feel in order to get better. I was like, once I felt that sting, I was like, yes, bliss and peace is on the way. Like happiness is on the way. Like that sting in the back of the throat was actually, yeah, it was something I really craved. You talked about like the taste. For me, it was that feeling in my throat
Yeah.
once like, the alcohol got there.
Okay, that's interesting. So you're developing a taste for something that can alter your reality and take you away from something that's maybe an uncomfortable, challenging, or unbearable experience. Your reality.
So,
So I relate to that, like you, I need to change the way I feel. Oh, hello, this does it for me. So it makes sense that the more we feel a sense of discomfort in ourselves and in our reality, the more we lean into certain things that we discover the solution,
Yeah.
as you put it. So do you want to just use at 15, your girlfriend am I right in saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Toby, it was an overwhelming sense of like rejection from her, right?
As you would have said, yeah, a fatal injection of rejection. But as you would have said, and then that reality, the reality where I think what I was doing for a really long time when I was finding my way of coping was searching for that happiness and like love and warmth that I felt with
Okay.
with her. And when and then when I first started drinking, that was the closest thing I found by far. There was nothing that came close to it. And you know boarding school is such a difficult dynamic because physically you can't go anywhere. You like that place, that place is where that's where you are. You can't go anywhere else. And so I couldn't go anywhere physically to change my environment. So my environment was always the same. So I found the ways to escape mentally and spiritually.
Yeah, yeah, makes
As
sense.
Yeah, and my mind altering substances did that. It was I was really looking to replace that feeling of being loved and that feeling of comfort that comes from that, of
So may
you have someone in your corner.
Yeah, so maybe the alcohol became the substitute for a lover.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
still love her, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
she's
it was
always there for you.
always there for me. Yeah, constant source of comfort. There when I wake up in the morning, there when I go to bed.
So
Yeah, because
so life within the walls of the institutions of a boarding school, right?
yeah,
I went to an all boys school. It wasn't boarding, it was just it was an all boys school. So I feel like I got a sense of it, although I didn't stay there. I can't possibly say I know what it's like to be in a boarding because I
mm,
didn't go to a boarding. But it's hard, isn't it, to be in a situation where your head's not in the right place. You feel like you're failing
yeah.
academically, um, and you're failing. Your brain is having a spasm, if you want to call it that.
Mhm.
It's not coping. It's feeling
Yeah.
chaotic, maybe at times, even overwhelming, overbearing.
I would say, yeah, chaotic was definitely the way to describe it. Although when it began to get really chaotic, I sort of numbed it out. Then I when it began to get too much, I would disassociate myself from my body and my reality massively because it was the only way I could cope. It was that there would be so much going on. I mean, I did it so much in therapy when a therapist would began to say things that like really hit home and like brought up a deep well of like sadness or fear, that I was so scared of those feelings. I was terrified of those feelings, that I would, my body and my mind would just shut down and I would go into this sort of like vegetative state, just kind of
Mm.
unresponsive.
Mm.
Um, it happened when I went to treatment, when I went to rehab as well. There were certain triggers that just like shut down all cognitive thinking and went into pure self-preservation mode.
Wow.
Uh,
Okay. So it's like a default setting that you develop.
yeah,
Excuse me. So let's bridge it, right? Because you just said
yeah,
about treatment, rehab. and
Yeah.
where you was at boarding, right? So there's like where you're at boarding, you've just been um, navigating this or trying to survive through this period of your life where you're feeling like you're not coping, right? And you're hanging on, sort of,
Yeah.
white to your knuckles, yeah, emotionally,
Yeah.
mentally, spiritually, whatever, right? Then you are doing some sessions with. Is this when, like, it was suggested? Was your parents at this point obviously had great concern, because obviously the school must be talking to your parents about what's going on, surely.
Yeah, so if you imagine the timeline, that, I was about 15 and a half when, I began to, like, when that breakup happened, and I just turned 17 when I went to treatment, which we will get
Okay.
to.
Yeah.
So if you think about sort of the timeline point of view, just after I had turned 16, and, for those past few months, I had been, I'd been drinking, I'd been doing the self-medicating, but in the end, that didn't become enough. And, that bliss that came from drinking, as it's likely to do, became, paranoia,
Hmm.
heightened anxiety and fear. And I didn't as much want to die as living with the feelings I had, because I had no idea how to deal with them, became too painful. I did not have a death wish. I had run out of. It was all very much of, how do I get rid of these feelings? How do I deal with these feelings? Because this thing that I had been doing, that had been working for a while, stopped working, and I had no other solutions. And so I didn't want to die, but I didn't see any other way to deal with these feelings that were just too much to live with. And so 2
No.
suicide attempts came in the space of a week. Yeah.
Wow. Can I just interject? Sorry, I just
No, of course.
interjected just as you said that. So sorry, it was a bit inappropriate.
No, 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 you're absolutely fine.
Um, so I was going to say again, I relate, because what you're describing. I want you to go into that a little bit more of what are you thinking at this time. But let me just say that um, it's a really shit space to be in. What you just described, I know it really well. When the thing that you are relying on and have been relying on, the lover, the drink, the drugs, whatever it is, the coping mechanism that is like your emotional crutch to try and get you through a certain situation in life. When that stops working, and then you start to have this realization that you're in this kind of like place, it's like a no man's land where it's like, it's a horrible place to be, isn't it? And I used to use, like you, I used to use ideations of suicide. It was kind of like my get out of jail strategy of, like, I'm in this prison of my mind, this
Yeah.
situation. And if I can just flirt with the idea, if I can just go somewhere and have a strategy, it's like a get out of jail strategy. So if it gets
Mhm.
really bad, I'll use it.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I never did, and I
Mhm.
found a way out, and we'll get into all of that in a bit. But so, going back to your version of that, where you're at, going right back,
Yeah.
how did you sort of get around that?
Yeah. So, like you said, just being in that space, how I look back at it, and, in my work, when I see it in other people, I think about how lonely you have to be in that space, how alone you have to be to to be in that space. Because, like, I think you said it perfectly. It was, I was trapped in a prison. By my perception, I was in a prison, and, physically, I felt like I was in a prison. I was at boarding school. I couldn't go anywhere. Um, and then mentally, the way I had escaped myself from that prison was, you know, drugs and drinking. And then when they began to not take me to the place I wanted to go, I could feel the walls closing back in.
Yeah.
And that's, it became like a caged animal. I was gonna lash out. And yeah, and it was I don't remember the timeline exactly. I don't remember if it was either the week after or a few weeks after my 16th birthday that 2 suicide attempts came in the space of a week. Um, and up until that point, if you had asked my parents or my school, "How's Toby doing?" "He's fine. He's doing really, really well." They had no idea because I had become really, really good at hiding it. I was incredibly I was incredibly good at hiding it, you know? And that's not something I take pride in bragging about, but
So it's not just like, I think it's quite a common term, functioning alcoholic or functioning addict. So you use
yeah.
like a functioning, I want to use the word psychotic, because we do feel like we're going psychotic at times where you feel like you want to take your own life. But I'm trying
Yeah.
to think of another term. But you were like a functioning wreckhead, basically. You was in a
Yeah.
place, but you was putting out a false sense of, a different narrative to the world around you.
Yeah.
It was all
Yeah, exactly.
internalized, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I think that's a really good way of describing it. And and, like, because I felt like I had to do that because I felt like I felt like I had an obligation to let people know I was okay, even though I wasn't, because everything had to be okay. So, but because everything wasn't okay, in my head, I was like, okay, everything's not okay. The best I can do then is have everyone think it's okay. And
So,
yeah,
can I just quickly interject? So, I think this is really common in society where, like you passing people in the corridor at school or in the street
yeah,
or at work, and you see someone and you're like, all right, mate. All right, Toby, how you doing, mate? Yeah, I'm great. How are you, Dave? Yeah, I'm wicked, man. Great. Take care. Have a great day. See you, mate.
yeah,
We both walk off, but really, where's my head at, really? I want to fucking kill myself. That's where my head's at.
yeah.
And that's kind of where I was at. Like you, I internalize stuff, but I'm telling everyone, yeah, I'm wicked, mate. So going back to it, sorry to sort of
No, no,
step,
no.
want to say that's a common dialogue, right?
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I've been working somewhere for 2.5 years, I've always tried to bring like a good energy to my work. And so when I see my boss, I'm like, hi boss, how are you? And he's like, oh, I'm good. How are you? I'm like, and on the days I'm good. And he'll say, and I'll come in the morning and I'll still say like, hey boss, and he'll be like, hey Toby, how are you? And I do remember one time where I was like, I can't lie, it's not been a great 24 hours. Some stuff's gone on. And he's like, and he's like, okay, you you going to the floor to work, and it was like he wasn't expecting it. He wasn't in he then like told me afterwards. He was like, I never expect someone to actually tell me. It's like it's very much like it's a mannerism. It's
Yeah.
politeness. It's formalities. When someone says hi, how are you? It's just a formal greeting. It's become a formal greeting instead of a really important and valuable question that
Do you, yeah.
needs a lot of good answers.
Do you think it's a British thing? Do you think this is a
I
culture
think
thing?
I think it's a British thing, because I see it in, I've had the privilege of being able to spend some time in other countries and, experience different cultures, and I don't see it there.
What
I don't
about
see it.
America? God bless America, but like, what about America? Come on, like LA, right? I love LA. Right? It's a mad place, but I love it.
Yeah.
But like, their culture is very much everything's half cup full, right? They're not allowed to be half cup empty like us British.
Mm.
But we are. But the thing is, the irony is, I think it's a paradox, if that's the right word, because it's like we
Yeah.
are quite miserable, us British, right? By our very nature, we're quite
Yeah.
raining and all of that. But we kind of use this sort of upbeat, we have to be kind of half cup full in a way. to
Yeah.
present, we present, "Yeah, I'm cool, everything's great," when really we're feeling a little bit empty.
Mm.
I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying. I don't know.
Oh, no, it makes sense. It's very much like a persona, Britain, you think of, rain, cold, you know, like living in like traveling underground, like but no sunlight, like the aesthetic of Britain, or I should say specifically, I guess the aesthetic of London is quite miserable, because the one thing that I am very grateful for, I mean, there are many things that I'm grateful for, but there's one in particular is, like the countryside, bit nature, because
Yeah.
English nature is absolutely stunning, and it's still one of the places I feel most comfortable in. You know, I still have a place, out where my family lives, in the north of London,
True.
like, yeah, in the country, yeah, and I still have, those spots that I can go to, like, in in like a field, like a mile away. I can go sit on like a fence post,
Or them
or
sheep. Was it sheep or cows that came on the
it
veranda?
was.
On the
I was. This did
Yeah.
come in my head. Yeah, you got hunted down by some sheep when you came to visit. You were terrified. These sheep just started walking towards us as we were walking, and I just kept walking because I was like, "They're sheep. They're harmless." And you had this real fear of,
Well,
like,
there was a mob of them, mate. There was a lot of them. Anyway,
yeah,
right.
but they're okay, yeah. We were getting off topic, but yeah, it's like,
Anyway, getting back to where were we? We was doing a bridge between your where you were at boarding school,
yeah,
doing some therapy. When you're starting to engage in therapy,
yeah.
you wasn't really subscribed maybe at that time. How did you end up getting to treatment to go to rehab? How did that happen?
I would say the night you and me met was my rock bottom, I would say. Like, that was the point of,
So you're telling me that I caused your rock bottom, Toby? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, absolutely. Dave, you are one of my
How
prod
that affects some people, man. Jesus.
you're the bane of my existence constantly. But no, like, that night, because I remember most of what, you said, being in that alley in the fetal position, throwing up on myself, and the face that on my dad, just, I physically, that has been, I think that's the only time in my life I've ever seen someone's heart physically break.
He was
That was, yeah,
so worried. I remember him just saying over and over how much he loves you so much, man. You already know.
yeah, yeah, and that's not something I ever want to see again from anyone, let alone, my dad. And so, even though I was so out of it, I remember the heartbreak on his face. And, and, and whilst I wasn't, ready to give up, drugs and drinking at that point, because, again, I was still so reliant on them, even though they weren't doing much positives for me at that point, you know, um, it was when I was willing to explore options to turn things around. It's when I began to become, open to solutions through the therapist. I went to some 12-step anonymous meetings. And I remember that first one where, a seed of, recovery was planted. And was I ready to give up then? No. But, like, listening to people, share their own experiences, and, the therapeutic value of, like, peer to peer support,
Oh, it's
not like
yeah.
peer support, I think, is probably what turned it around. It was never like a doctor, or a therapist, or someone with a degree, like, telling me, "Oh, maybe you should just try this." It was just other people saying, "We've been in the same place.
Yeah.
We know how you feel, and you know it."
And can I just I want to just land on this point, right? This is really
Mm.
important, I believe. Really
Yeah.
is. Excuse me. It's fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, Toby, you've come from a family and a background where you've got you know, and you went to a good school, you know, and you're
Yeah.
intelligent. And so like I was saying earlier, all on paper, everything, you know, what's the problem? Why have you know, what's wrong with you? You know, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about your, you know, having a rock bottom. You've got, you know, your mental health has declined. You know, you want it to the point where you're thinking about killing yourself, and you've even tried. You know, you're smashing yourself up and your body and your health with alcohol, copious amounts of it, and you're exploring all these other ways to try and, you know, deal with life because you can't handle life in the way that you're living. Yet the very seed, the thing that really sort of was the catalyst, correct me if I'm wrong, for you to then start to recover, didn't cost a penny.
Mm.
You know, like I relate again because, you know, we've got different stories. You know, we're from different demographic, if that's right, you know, or whatever, circumstances different, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I was brought up in a certain way, you're brought up in a certain way, but there's a lot of similarities. And the thing that I have in similarity to you is that I went like you, I went and sat in a group of, you know, a room full of complete strangers, didn't cost a penny. It was support group, you know. And I sat there and something clicked. And here I am years later, smashing the shit out of an amazing life that I now have, you know, and it didn't cost a penny. And of course I've had
Yeah.
to, you know, I've chosen to do some really good therapy and, you know, whatever. But that was the seedling, do you feel? Was like, you know, it was a room full of strangers and there was something there for you.
There was something there, yeah, and I didn't even realize it at the time. It was only really with hindsight, to be honest. It was like, you know, you know, I went. I remember because you took me to that, you know, to that support group. I remember.
I don't remember that, if I'm honest. Sorry.
Past if we walked past Grenfell, when we were talking about it, and then
Okay.
a mutual friend of ours was collecting 90 days.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah, yeah.
apologies. Alright,
That's yeah, and so, you know, and like I re- I I remember, you know, you taking me to this place, and like, and I sat down next to you in his room. There were probably about, I would say, like 30 people in there. And I was, uh, I think I was the youngest.
how old was you? 16. You're
I was 16. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right, okay.
And you know, and there was a guy there sharing his story, and you know, that feeling when, you know, it's very, when you're looking for support, when you're looking for some, some connection, and someone says, "I know how you feel." It's very, I don't know about you, it's very easy for me to tell the difference, and it always has been, from someone who does and someone who doesn't.
Of
And
course.
yeah, you know when someone knows,
Mhm.
because there is that just unspoken sort of energy connection.
You just feel it.
Mm.
It's you
You
just
do
feel the
feel it,
connection.
yeah, it's just a feeling. And, you know, I had gone, you know, when I'd been looking for that connection, and, you know, I went through all of those therapists and doctors, and they said, "Oh, I know what that must be like." And I was like, "No, you don't. You have absolutely no idea. Everything you've studied about this has come out of a book," which is not me slamming on doctors. They do the best they can. That's the truth of it. This sort of, this illness is far more complex and deeper than what I think a lot of people give it credit for.
Mm,
But going to that support group and then having someone essentially share a version of my story out of my life where I had felt so misunderstood and rejected,
mm,
and then hear those same feelings come from someone else.
mhm.
That was it. It was finding that identification, because, you know, no, I hadn't felt that with anyone. I hadn't felt like anyone understood, anyone got it until that guy spoke.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's, you know, thanks for sharing that, Toby.
Yeah.
And that's just your, you know, the way you see things. That's, and you're entitled to that. You know, it's your reality. and your experience. I just want to say that, there are some, it is subjective and it is a lottery. There are some really good people out there that are, in positions of, whether it's a doctor or a therapist, whatever. Um, but it's very personal. It's a personal thing, and like you've experienced, not everyone gets it.
Yeah.
But it's not to say that there are some people out there that do get it. I had my own experience was that, like you, I had some people that I sat in front of who just didn't get it. I'm an alien, as far as I'm concerned. I feel like an alien, and if like they look at me like I'm an alien. But then there's some amazing people who I sat in front of and worked with who were just incredible, and they were living in their own recovery from their own experience. And these are people in positions of uh, you know being a professional. So I think they are out there, but it's subjective. Anyway, um, so getting back to you go to treatment rehab at 16, right? Or
Well, yeah, I just turned. I went 5 days after my 17th birthday. Actually, I remember my 17th birthday was the last time I ever had a drink or a drug. Um,
so how? Hang on.
like
So
that.
just how sober are you now?
Uh, if I'm doing it by numbers, about 4 years and 10 months.
Amazing. So nearly 5 years. Wow, 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 wow.
So, yeah, not
Okay.
yeah. If if everything stays on track, yeah, I'll be 5 years in a month and a half. But don't count
I
don't count that chicken before it's hatched.
don't know. I think you're a lifer, mate. I think you're in this for life. I think you're
That's certainly what I intend to, but I don't intend to take that for granted. Um,
fair point.
but yeah, but I went to so yeah, I got sent to treatment in the Netherlands, which my parents weren't originally on board for. I'm sure you remember that conversation.
I do.
Yeah, but and that feeling that I spoke about when you find someone and they say, "I know how you feel," and you know it. And, I had felt a little bit of hope from just saying like one person from one person sharing that. I was then put in like a place with 20 of them.
Like a community,
Like a community of people who understood,
yeah,
um, you know, of people, from lots of different countries. You know, quite a few from the UK, which did help, as well. Um, yeah, because I think if I had gone somewhere and I was the only English person there, that probably would have been quite tough.
mm,
But I was quite grateful that there were, because different countries, have different, it's different demographics, it's different, different cultures. And so having people, from the UK definitely helped.
yeah,
Um, but I think the biggest thing I got out of treatment, and I think is kind of what you said at the very, very beginning, my self-esteem was in the gutter, for a long period of my life. I had absolutely no self-worth, no sense of self, no identity, because we become very good at masking. Anybody who goes through a mental health disorder has more than likely, and that's a generalization, I'll admit, but more than likely has tried to hide it in some way, whether that be for self-preservation or out of the care of loved ones. Um, and for me, my masking, my hiding was a way of, again, trying to find that acceptance and love from people, where
mm,
I was like, right, these people might accept me. How do I make myself someone who would be accepted? Because in my head, it never occurred to me for years that being myself and being authentic was good enough for anyone. So,
mm,
I changed myself. I was different people for different people. Um, and so I went to treatment, and they gave me a therapist, and they gave me a counselor. And the therapist sat down and was like, "What do you want out of this, man? Like, you're in another country. You've come to the Netherlands at 17. For fuck's sake, shit can't be that good. Like, what are you looking for out of this? And I said, I want to know who I am, because I had not been myself in such a long time. Even before the using, even before that breakup, like when I was saying earlier, like those foundations of things had been building for quite a long time before that breakup was the catalyst for a lot of structure. And yeah, and I don't, here's the thing, I don't blame anyone, for this. I do not blame that, that girl. I do not blame my family. But most importantly, I don't blame myself anymore. I take accountability for myself, but I don't just look at myself and say it's your fault, because that's not healthy.
Because what you're saying there, and this is common, it always comes up, is victim mode.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy. Doesn't matter who you are. I'm a victim.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. If only you knew what's to be me.
That's definitely what it used to be. I was the drama. In treatment, they called me a drama king. I think I literally earned that title.
Toby, I have to say, you are, you're gifted in all things theatrical, should we say? You've just learned to channel it. You've just got to channel it in the right way, right? Which is what you've learned, and you're learning day at a time to do. Continue to how to express myself in a healthy way, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and my family, they're all very gifted in their own ways.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, and we all have our thing, and mine is a more creative side. Mine is in music, for example.
And you're very gifted in that department,
Thank you.
You're insanely. I thought I could tinker on the ivories until I came to your house and saw you play the piano, and I thought, I got to stop playing. Got to stop. I've got to stop pretending that I can play.
No, you did. I couldn't do what you do on a guitar, honestly.
No.
I've tried learning guitar so hard. I've got piano fingers, but the point is, it's like, I went into treatment just with absolutely no idea of who I was. And actually, I'll share this. In my second week, you have like group therapy as part of the treatment process. And in that second week, there were, they split like the community into like two, because if you had like a huge group of like 30 people, it would take too long. But there were about 11 of us, and there was, a therapist and a counselor in there. And, when you're doing group therapy, everybody checks in, they say how they're doing. And it came round to me, and I said, hi, I'm Toby. And the counselor was like, no, I'm not interested in what you have to say. I want to hear from the next person. And I was fuming. I was furious. I was so angry. And then, so yeah, like two people, I was like absolutely seething. Like you would have seen steam coming out of my ears. I was livid. And then two people checked in, and then I interrupted the group. I was like, why did you stop? Why can't I shout? I'm a part of this group. And he said, no, this group is for people. I don't see a person in you. You're a shell. You're empty. There is no humanity in you currently. And so get some. And that struck a chord. Oh my.
That's quite harsh. That's quite a harsh statement.
It was harsh. It was, yeah. It was our mutual a mutual friend currently from the caravan. Yeah, I'm sure you know.
It's very cryptic, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
Exactly. No one else will know who that means.
Right. Yeah.
But
okay.
Yeah.
So from what I'm understanding, Toby, you have got, and still can have, but of course and I'm the same, right? A very grandiose plethora of ego, right? And that's something that is created by the condition of being in that time, the former life that we lived. We needed that ego to survive. And I think when you land your ass on a seat in front of that said person, it just absolutely annihilated you, do you feel they're
Yeah.
trying to break your ego? Is that what that's all about? Is that part of the
Uh,
process?
looking back at it, it was like I had all of my masks up, the egos up. All of this was essentially like bubble wrapping or shells or shields to that protected like my authentic self, like me. Like all of that there and had been there for so long as a survival mechanism. And
Makes
even
sense.
though,
Makes
yeah,
sense. Yeah.
yeah. And even though I was in a place that, promoted authenticity and was going to help me, you know, find that again, I didn't know how to turn it off. I didn't, and
Yeah.
I don't even necessarily think I even needed to or even wanted to at the time until it happened, because it had become just a part of myself that, I had evolved to, to that sort of person. And so, I wasn't able to take away the marks. I wasn't able to, bring down my ego. So I did have to have it shattered. And and
Shut on. Basically.
shat on. I got absolutely shat on. And the way I kind of describe it is like if you're building, if you're building a tower, right? Through life, you are building a tower. You start from the bottom and you're going straight. You're going straight, and you get new floors, and on each floor there is a different thing. And that thing then becomes a part of you. If you start building in the wrong or unhealthy direction, then that building becomes warped. You can't, if you're building a tower and you build it straight and suddenly it begins to curve right, you can't just have it curve left again, because you can't just keep going, because otherwise that foundation, as you get higher, is going to get weaker and weaker and it will topple. So you have to stop, break it back down, make a new plan, and you start building again. Like that's the best metaphor I have for life and its issues.
That's a
It's
great way of putting it. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. It was the way I explained it to my parents.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know how I came up with that metaphor or analogy. I was
It's a good one. I like it.
Yeah.
But
That's how I explain it, to people
yeah,
about
well,
like,
yeah.
where my journey goes.
So you go to rehab. Um,
Yeah.
you you basically your building's wonky,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like you had to have it demolished and then start from
Yeah.
the ground up. Yeah.
Yeah. I had to
Right.
completely rebuild myself.
Okay. So explain how you did that. I mean, you've rehab, obviously, treatment, without going into it because it's such a lengthy process and there's a lot going on there. But, what are your takeaways? And then to come out, how did that look like? What happened going forward?
Yeah, so I mean, there are so many things that can make a person, from their, I wouldn't necessarily say beliefs, but just from their interests and their soul and their likes, and what matters to them. There are so many things that make a person. But if you had asked me, 4.5 years ago, what made me me, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. And so my my I didn't know how to identify who I was. And so my therapist had an idea. And he didn't tell me what this idea was until he kind of sprung it on me as a little trap. He said, what do you, what do you love? And I was like, I love Harry Potter. I absolutely adore, the world of Harry Potter. Like I listened to the audiobooks growing up. I read the books, watched the films. Um, and he said, "Okay, who's your favorite character in Harry Potter?" I was like, "Oh, Dumbledore. He's the coolest wizard ever." And he was like, "Okay." And so he said, "I want you to make me," like he gave me an A3 piece of paper and he said, "Next week, I want a full like mind map and like fact sheet about Dumbledore. Like tell me everything about him." I was like, "Okay." And so I think one of the coaches at the Drew Center printed out like a 20-page Wikipedia document for me, about like everything about Dumbledore's life. And it was one of the most detailed things I'd ever like And like, it was the most fun project I think I had done in a very long time. Like,
And
make
can I
this fact file. Yes.
interject that? Do you feel like it sounds like, and I relate, right? On the sense that when you gain clarity in your life, when you sober up, right? Whether it's for the
Yeah.
rest of your life or just you have some sobriety, so you're more present, right? You're more connected.
Yeah.
You're paying attention. You have clarity, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
is it fair to say that suddenly you feel this enhanced sense of connection to what you're doing? So everything
Yes.
becomes more vibrant and you get more
Yeah.
clarity, more bang for the buck, right?
The color returns. Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of being mono, right? So
Exactly.
it sounds like what you're experiencing is that for the first time in a very long time, right?
Yeah. And, that passion into that, into that project that week, I put so much effort into it. Like, did you know he has a birthmark on his leg, which is to show you the London Underground. Dumbledore.
I've never
Dumbledore, yeah.
I've not seen any Harry.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
I've
Okay,
never seen them. Never
that's
seen.
fine. Yeah, and some people may have seen where this exercise that my therapist had me do is going. I will tell you, I did not. And when he told me the twist, I was like, "Oh, you got me good."
Ah,
He had a look at it, and he was like, "This is really, really good. This is brilliant. I'm learning a lot." And he said, "You can keep it." And then he gave me another A3 piece of paper. He said, "I want you to do the same thing about you."
wow. Okay.
And I was like, "Oh my God." And, you know, by he channeled my creativity and my sense of self through someone else and had tricked me into doing it. Or, well, not necessarily tricked me, because it's definitely something I wanted to do, but I just didn't know how to. Um, and then he gave me a path to do it for myself, and I did. I I made that piece myself, and I rediscovered myself there. I relearned
Wow.
who I was. Like, so many things that had been forgotten. Like, like, whilst music had always been a part of my life, it was also a very easy place to hide, because if you're if you're singing, no one can be speaking to you. If you're on a piano, you're looking at the piano, you're not looking at anyone. And so whilst music and still is an important part of my life, there was definitely a period of time where I used it for the wrong reasons, as a way to hide away from people.
Like a distraction.
Exactly, like a distraction. Although there were periods where, music was the only way that I felt like I could be authentic and honest. When I would be writing songs, I would write songs, and then I felt like I could put myself into that. But then there was a lot of time where, I would just go lock myself in a music room and just play
Yeah.
whatever I felt like, because it meant
I
I
think
didn't have to interact with people.
Yeah, I think it's like anything, if music to me is therapy, man. Whether you're writing it or singing it or playing it or just um allowing it to become part of you, if you're just listening to it and connecting to it. For me it's so therapeutic. Um but it's perception, it's where your head's at.
Yeah.
It depends. You can use anything in a healthy or unhealthy way. It depends where your head's at.
Yeah, beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah,
Like, it's
exactly
all
that.
about the way we see things. And
Exactly that.
the fact we see things all different is absolutely okay, because that's what it means to be human, you know? Like, if we all saw things the same way, the world, I have to say, and life would be incredibly boring. And I would say, yeah, I think if everybody saw everything the same way, there would be no creativity, for one.
Very
The
true.
arts would be completely pointless.
Very
And,
true.
you can say, like, there would be, peace, if you want, I suppose. But I would say also life would become meaningless, I would say, if everybody saw things the same way, because we have nothing to strive for. We have nothing.
Yeah.
If we want to, if we all want the same thing, and we all want to make if we all want to make our own marks on the world, we all want to go to the same place, then it becomes pointless, because there's
Well,
nothing to it all becomes comparative. There's no
yeah, yeah,
individuality.
yeah. And I like that. We need individuality. Definitely, 100%.
Yeah.
So,
Is that was? I think it is.
for God knows. So, okay, so that sounded amazing. Very profound experience you had there, and that's such a beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's a really had a lot of
Oh, of
impact.
course.
You know, I think a lot of people, anyone that's listening to this, can really um, see what happened there. You know that we forget ourselves. You know, who am I? You know, and we just put our
Yeah.
focus into everyone else and everything else, and we just don't have any value or sense of self for ourselves. So
Yeah.
you learn how to sort of actually do that and put some focus into who am I? Excuse me, and to go on a journey, a quest for self-discovery. Who is Toby? So
Yeah.
I think we should end on this, right, Toby? So I'm going to ask you, who is Toby? And how did you get like where you're at now? And for me, look, I've been on this quest for quite some time, and I'm forever evolving. Until the end of days, I'm always going to be reinventing myself, right?
Yeah.
But I've got a very lovely, lovely sense of connection to. I really know myself well. I've become really good friends with myself, which is amazing because I used to fucking hate myself. And I've put in a lot of work and, done lots of different things to get to that point. So what I'm asking is, if you would be so kind, is kind of where you at now, and what in a kind of like a snapshot, coming out of treatment to where you're at now, sort of, you know, what have you taken away from it, and what do you apply, and what's your magic formula? What do you do? You know, for anyone that's listening, what could you pass on that you've learned from that journey of, what you just shared with us all, from being in a really shit place to where you're at now, basically.
Powerlessness is a superpower, I would say. Is I I spent so long, putting my value in the opinions and thoughts and beliefs of other people, right? Like, I spent so long, I was told that I was told that all my self-worth came from what I achieved academically. And so and then when I wasn't able to achieve that, and I tried so hard to, I then tried to, change the way other people saw me. But there is only one thing I can change, and it is myself. Everything else is unchangeable. I cannot change other people. I cannot change my family. I cannot change my friends. I can't change my colleagues. I can't change anyone in the world. I'm powerless over people, places, and things. And so why do I give myself so much pain and give the power to people who, in the end, have no control over what I do? Why I can't give them that power. That power is for me and myself alone. And that's not as much of an ego as it is actually now having that self-worth, and that core belief of worthlessness is now lifted through my soul. And I do feel that. I do feel
Wow.
that self-worth, that worthlessness
Mm.
that I used to feel is not how I feel anymore. And that does it come with now me thinking that I'm the most important thing and, God's child and get me on the Celebrity Apprentice or whatever. No, that's not how it works. But that does mean now that I have the ability to stand up for myself and the courage to know that who I am is more than okay. And, who I am is, I'm me. I there are so many different things that make me me, and I can list a couple of them, right? You know, music. makes for me. No one's voice sounds like mine, because no one's voice sounds like anyone's voice. My voice is mine. No one plays piano like I do. Many people probably play it better. I am, which is okay, but I like mine. That's the thing. It's, comparison is the thief of joy, right? Comparing myself to others, and I need to try, and I always do try really hard not to do it within my family, because of, how the high achievers are, how high the bar is. And I don't give myself that bar anymore. My bar is not success. My bar is happiness, and I would say that is the new expectation I have is just, I mean, not even happiness, because you're not always going to be happy, but that's okay. My bar is contentment,
Good
right?
word. A sense of
If
contentment.
a sense of contentment, just because, because you're not always going to be happy, and that's okay. That is more than okay. But, if I go to bed happy, fantastic.
Mm.
If I go to bed and I say, you know what, I'm not feeling great, I'm not 100% at the moment, but I know I'll be okay.
Mm.
That for me is contentment. Just and because even just by saying that, it's like, I will be okay. Like, by having that acknowledgement, it's not great, but I'll be all right. Is the knowledge that everything will be okay, which, comes from our own self-beliefs. It can be encouraged from other people by telling us, hey, it's going to be all right. But that's meaningless unless we believe it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Can I just ask you a question? That was beautiful.
Of
Thank you,
course,
Toby. Right.
of
So
course.
you went to one of the best schools in the country, fair to say.
Yeah,
And you went back to school. So I forgot to add this. You went back to school when you came out.
I did. Yeah.
You went back into the same school.
Yeah.
Did you come out of there with what, did you get the job done, so to speak, when you came out?
I did. Yeah. It was a really strange environment for several reasons, because as I went back to school, it was after the pandemic.
Mm,
When I went back to school is when everyone else went back to school.
yeah.
And so, everybody had been at home for long, not seeing each other, not really doing any school. And
Mm.
so, um, when I went back to school, like, I saw, seeing my teachers, seeing my housemates, seeing my friends. It a bit like, I was really lucky to have some really good friends who were very, very kind to me, and they wrote me letters. I received a letter from each one of my housemates when I was in treatment.
I remember that
And
because, sorry, go on.
no, yeah, it's like the value of, the school for me was never about what I learned academically. It's what it's what I learned about people for me.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that is the most valuable thing that I learned out of school. It wasn't anything
I
academic. Yeah.
I relate. I always say this, I learned the art of survival, which is what
Yeah.
you're saying, how to interact in life with myself and other people. Um, I want to just quickly explore. I was going to say we'll end on this, but I think it's relevant, so we'll keep it going.
Yeah.
Um, your When you came out, did you set the intention to stay? Because at that point you'd been clean off of, like, sober, right? You've done a detox,
Yeah.
right? So you've
Yeah.
done a full detox, and you're how many months, weeks sober at that point when you came
Uh,
out?
when I came out, the day I left, I would have been 75 days clean.
Which is
Because I
amazing.
was, yeah, yeah. Because, yeah, I got my, I celebrated 90 days clean like 2 weeks after I
Mm.
I left treatment, so that the timeline adds up. So, yeah, it would have been about 75 days when I left.
Okay, amazing. And I remember having some conversations with you from your dorm. when you was in there, when you went back, when you came out of treatment,
Yeah.
to navigate the Friday night. Was it Friday night or Saturday night? You used to do this like pizza thing where everyone used to get the beers in and everyone would
Saturday
be,
night. Yeah, Saturday night.
and you had to try and navigate that. I mean, that's a tough gig for someone who's just come out of treatment, rehab at that age, is now sort of setting the intention. Did you know in your heart that you was going to remain sober? Did you intend to stay sober?
Yes. And I understand not everybody who comes from treatment or sets on the recovery path doesn't always intend just to go straight sober or clean.
I'll just go to rehab, sort my shit out. I'll
Yeah,
be
exactly.
clean.
And
I'll
sort
come out
out.
and I'll get on with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'll be able to drink responsibly. I'll be able to smoke responsibly, inhale,
Like not
inject,
like
whatever.
normal blood.
Yeah, like normal people. What is a normal person these days? But no, I did come out with the intention of being clean, because for me it's like what I gained in treatment was so incredibly valuable to me, because like that sense of self, like the confidence and the courage and my identity and my authenticity, that's the thing I gained most, I would say. I got myself back. um and after being free of after having lost it for so long, like the feeling and the knowledge that that was back was undescribable. And the fact of being gone for so long made it so much more valuable. And that was like the drive.
Mm.
um I mean, there were so many drives, wanting to, make my family proud, wanting to make my friends proud, wanting to make myself proud, like wanting to be the best I could be. There were so many drives, but the main was that I don't ever want to lose my sense of identity again.
Yeah.
um
So just quickly, Toby, I just again I relate that sense that you're describing. I
yeah.
I really hold on to that. I always make sure I kind of get nostalgic over that first part of my I always call it redemption, that period of my life when I started to redeem myself from an ex-hellraiser. It was a hugely profoundly intoxicating, euphoric, heightened sense of joy. And that sounds really cheesy, but it's how it felt. When you reconnect, it's sublime. That feeling of like, I
Yeah.
feel alive. I feel alive.
Yeah.
I feel really alive and connected to fuck, I've got my life back. I've got a
Yeah.
second shot at this, man. This is fucking great. I'm in and I'm not gonna jeopardize this. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep hold of this because I've worked hard to get it and I'm not gonna let it go.
Mhm.
So I nurtured it. I made sure I fucking protected it like my life
Yeah.
depended on it because it did. So that's kind of where you're at when you had that sense, right?
Yeah, it was very, very similar. That sense of, the sense of self, the people I had met along the way who helped me to get where I did, and the people who I have met further along in my journey who still help me to get, where I live. Like, I am not the same. Am I the same person who left treatment, like, 4.5 years ago? No. I have changed a lot, but that is okay. That is more than okay, because whilst I have changed and I have grown and I have learned, and my environment has also changed. I don't live at home. With my well, everybody, I live at home, but like I don't live with my family. Um, and I have different aspects of my life. My life is ever evolving, ever changing. And if you fight against the tide of or the current of the river, you're gonna drown. So just get on the ride and enjoy it.
With it.
It's like
Yeah, go.
stuff's gonna come. Don't fight it. Go with the flow.
Yeah.
Just it's just it's one of many things on the stream.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, look, Toby, we really are gonna close it down now. So,
Seems fair,
uh,
yeah.
just to end on this, you came out of school,
Yeah.
you went into life. Academically, did you get what you needed from school to do what you're doing now, or is it relevant? Because you've carved out this path for yourself, right?
Mm.
And you're still on that, and you're still carving it out. And I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're now in this space that a lot of people get into. I was hesitant at first. I was still doing hairstyling and being in that world of glam and celebrity and music and all of that stuff, fashion. And I got into my own sense of recovery myself, and I thought I'm good. I feel good about myself. I'm going to crack on and continue to do this job. But then something started to shift in me. I sort of wanted to give back a bit more, and now I found my true purpose, which is doing what I'm doing now, and helping people. I've been doing that for many years now. So, what's your spin on that? Where are you at with all that?
Well, I mean, I'm sure, as you probably know, because I think I've told this to you a lot. You are my inspiration. You really have been. You're one of my many. I have a few sorts of inspiration, in different ways, but you were the one who first inspired me to go down the path that I have, because the effect that you had on my life, if I can have half the effect on others' lives that you've had on mine, then I would be a very, very fulfilled man. Um, I left school, and I went to university, study music, and I still do music, and
Mm,
I still study. I perform. I perform in London. Like, I write. Like,
mm,
that stuff is important to me,
mm,
but it is not. It's not my purpose, I don't think.
mm.
Yeah, and I'm still figuring that out. I still figure out where things in life fit in, and that's okay. I'm 21. I don't have to have everything figured out. Like,
I think you're going to be all right, man. I think, look, for me, it's like I see that, like, I think you're very similar, very creative, right, artistic, and also I want to be of service to myself, others, and the society and the planet and my fellow Earthlings, right? And
yeah,
I never thought I'd ever, back in the day, preempt myself saying that, but I've just said it, and this is what I'm doing. And I think it's really important for us for all of us to establish, what is it I actually want to do with my life, and to your best of your ability, pursue it. And
yeah,
then and it's up to people what they want to do. No one should be saying this is what you're meant to be doing with your life. You got to figure it out for yourself, and then just go and do it, grab it, make it happen. So I think the best is yet to come, Toby. And I look forward to seeing that. And I know you're doing
I,
great things. You're helping a lot of people. I know you are. So
I'm doing my best, and yeah, if the best is yet to come, I'm really, really excited, because it's been a blast already.
yeah, well, it's been great having you on.
Thanks for having me.
You're an inspiration as well. I'm always
Thank
inspired
you, man.
by you lot. You lot, I say you lot, the young mavericks who I failed to do what you lot did at 2020, well, 16, 15, 16. I failed to do that, man. So
Mm.
I salute you. You're an inspiration, and
Thank you, man.
keep
That means a
keep
lot coming
pumping
from
on.
you.
It's all good, man.
I certainly plan to.
All right,
Uh,
dude. Have a great day. Good seeing you, and
and you, man.
catch up soon, man.
Catch up very, very soon. Take it easy.
Ciao.